Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 69 of the Blowback
Nice.
Roundtable. We
Nice.
are expecting our special guest. He's a hard-working man, Dust James. He usually joins us from his rig as he's, driving deliveries around the East Coast. But he has not shown up yet, so we hope he pops in soon. My regular co-hosts are all with me. I got Ben Toth and Paige Hungry, Carlo Parcelli in Washington, D.C., and Ian Kummer is from a suburb in Moscow. So thank you guys very much for joining us. Our episode today is entitled Uncontrolled Panic Rocks the West. And I know the biggest thing that represents that truth, one of the biggest things is, of course, the U.S. sending Janet Yellen, the Fed chairwoman, over to China to, try and figure something out. But on all fronts, it seems that the West is just in increasingly rapid decline. And but I'm open to suggestions on where we want to go first. Any thoughts, guys?
It's multifaceted, but perhaps you're right that Beijing is the place to go in the footsteps of Janet Yellen. And I kind of enjoyed the thing that all the headlines were about. Don't you help Moscow in the Ukraine. We are warning you. We're going to sanction your banks, which is ridiculous because that's, the debtor threatening the creditor. I don't know how that works. Can I politely kill your daughter or something like that's the equivalent of it? And she met with Wang Yi, and she also met with U.S. businesses in there and talked about this overcapacity that China has, the industrial capacity in green technologies and cars, and that has to stop. We have to tell people not to buy that shit. Basically, came away with not much that I could find in the Chinese readouts, and I think she was still there with a regular. She got done on a regular airplane staircase when Mr. Lavrov already arrived from Russia and got the full red carpet treatment, went to meet Wang Yi, and then Xi Jinping, which Yellen didn't even get to do. Like, is it a coincidence that she was still there and now there's the big diplomatic things in Moscow going on? We're talking about still the second largest buyer, I think, after Japan, of U.S. debt. That's what China still is, even though it's dumping it. It's increasing the speed, but it's not drastically dumping a lot. It's dumping it and buying gold. And she goes there to sweet talk, to threaten, to sanction, and I just don't know how I'd react if I were in China. That's the core of it. Yeah, by the way, the headlines today were already that Russia and China already stand united. This is both Wang Yi and Xi Jinping against Western bullying and saying, no, we're not going to temper the normal regular trade that we have with Russia just because you say so. So we got an answer on that front.
Go ahead, Bill.
So, what do you guys think? I mean, I definitely have some thoughts on the hypocrisy of Yellen complaining that China is engaging in free trade and threatening China to, that they're going to start doing some protectionist policies if China insists on engaging in free trade. It's one of those 180-degree turns from all the rhetoric that they've been shoving down our throats for many generations about, hey, we're about freedom and free trade, and that's the way to go. And now, Janet goes to the Fed chairwoman goes to China and says, we're going to start protecting if you don't, end this, what do they call it? What was the word? Overcapacity, right? Overcapacity. Which, I thought free trade was the whole point of it was to proliferate material goods, lower prices for consumers, and make material goods available for everyone. Like, wasn't that the point of free trade? Isn't that why it was sold to us? So now all of a sudden, because, this rhetoric is not benefiting your economic interests, we're going to go ahead and, move to something else. So now we're going to promote protectionist policies, which, again, is just a 180-degree turn of the last several generations of propaganda pushing free trade, which never really existed, of course.
The rules-based order, baby. Do as I say, not as I
Yeah.
do. And they're accusing the other side of subsidizing this chip industry. It has nothing to do with innovation, nothing to do with the huge built-up, basically robotic manufacture. It took decades to do that. No. It's you doing protectionism. The EU is probing China for these sort of subsidies in solar panels, batteries, and EV technologies. They're doing the same, following the US.
And Chinese electric vehicles are outselling Musk's electric vehicles now. And you have to go back into the memory hole when Kissinger and Nixon devised this plan to with the rapprochement with China, and that was to drive a wedge between Russia and China. But now circumstances have turned so much that Russia and China are indefatigable allies. They're just, I mean, and for good reason, they're allies. They can see the duplicity of the West. So I didn't see the point of her going over there at all.
Yeah, 2 years. I mean, they tried this before during the Ukraine war, but it's been 2 years and they try again. It just smells so desperate, you know.
It does.
I was watching a commentator. I forget who it was. I'd like to give them credit, but I mean, they were just saying, you know, they were explaining the visit went like this. So they go to China and say, China, you need to let us destroy Russia without interfering, and so we can do it to you next. Now stop interfering with our destruction of Russia, and then you know you're going to be next. And so everybody in China is aware of that, and so it's just ridiculous that China is going to listen. Like, okay, yeah, go ahead. We'll just let you. We'll take our hands off. You destroy Russia, and then come after us. It's fine. Yeah, like nobody's that stupid.
Well, the big thing is that I think there's a realization whether or not they're friendly or if they're even allies. You know, there is, I think, this realization that, you know, with China and Russia, if one of them collapses, then that will just leave the other exposed to deal with the rules-based world orders, they like to call themselves. Alone, I don't think anyone in either Russia or China wants to do that. And I think it's important to remember that even back in, I want to say it was 1971, when China joined the United Nations for the first time, it was the Soviet Union was in favor of China joining the General Assembly, and the USA was opposed to it, even though that they just had that border conflict a couple of years earlier. Soviet Union still supported China opening diplomatic relations with the rest of the world. So it's always, I think there's always been that. Even when relations between Russians and Chinese were poor, there was always that respect. But that respect has never existed with the USA. Even when the USA was pandering to China, it was never out of respect. It was always out of convenience. So now that's no longer convenience. There's no respect because there wasn't respect to begin with.
True.
And the U.S. underestimated China. And I just want to say that I do realize that at the time that I was talking about earlier under Nixon, it was the Soviet Union. So for our listeners, but go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry.
I just want to say that there's panic in the military industrial front when you look at channels like, you know, Defense One, Defense Post, those kinds of, like, they're going to have the largest air force in the world. They're going to be as powerful as us. They're going to have the largest navy in the world, while we are having all these setbacks. We can't even put frigates out as we wanted to. You know, sweet talk, Yellen goes there. At the same time, they want to bring, and this is all over explicit headlines, bring Kishida to a summit with Biden. And I think one of the headlines was about a Tokyo bullet train, which just made me laugh. But it was mostly about defense cooperation. We're going to bring you into AUKUS, basically deputizing the Philippines, South Korea, and Japan to do their dirty work there. You know, threatening you with one hand and kind of the sweet talk. Come on, please buy our debt with the other. It just so. I don't know why what happened to U.S. diplomacy, because this isn't diplomacy. I don't know.
That seems like such a headache for anybody in China that is forced to deal with that craziness. I mean, I wouldn't want that job for my worst enemy.
Yeah, also, so history, because Ian brought it up. I watched some Chinese commentators. There's this really cool military chick, I think Zhao Dashuai, something like that, say, yeah, we might have problems with shooting, at Taiwanese ships or airplanes because we consider them fraternal, kind of like Russia and Ukraine. But you bring Japanese ships to our shore, oh, we can't wait to scrap them, mate. There's real brutal history there that the US just likes to conveniently forget.
Yeah.
Well, it's provocation too. I mean, because the USA is a lot about provocation. So, I mean, the people in the State Department who push these ideas know that it's provocative, considering what Japan did to China in the 20th century. It's known as provocative to prop up Japan. It's like, oh, look at the defenders of democracy, against Chinese aggression in Japan.
It's just as provocative as German tanks in the Ukraine again. I mean, it's
yes. With the Balkan Kreuz, not the Iron Cross, but the classic, what your grandfathers fought against. Yeah, exactly the same.
So this pivot away from free market policies and this accusation that China is at overcapacity, and this overcapacity could hurt U.S. firms, and that's going to force the United States to take countermeasures, such as tariffs. So, I mean, free trade has never been anything other than propaganda, right? Because while the U.S. has been pushing free trade, they've been, sanctioning like 40 different countries to force their political capitulation. And then when you talk about free trade, it's typically in order to get small developing countries to open up their markets to being, flooded with Western exports. And typically that'll end up, eliminating the production capacity of that particular country. And then they become dependent on the Western exports to survive. And then the market becomes effectively captured. So that's how the U.S. has played the game for 75 years. It's just a lot of hypocrisy when they're complaining about China's overcapacity. Because number one, China is not flooding the United States with goods. Like if you look at their percentage, like it's like 8% of solar panels or something, or electric vehicles. I don't even know if it's 8% of electric vehicles. But you can't make the argument that China has a large market share in the United States. But that was some of the responses. I read some of the responses on the Global Times, and they had some facts and figures showing that this oversupply argument is false. So it's overcapacity is the new term for containment. It's just the new pretext and justification to contain China, which of course is a euphemism for destroying China for regime change. But it's a pipe dream. It's a Western pipe dream. So what about the argument that China ought to be doing more? They ought to be sacrificing more. They ought to have more skin in the game when it comes to the challenges that Russia is currently facing. There's some sentiment, and it's been, it's a long-held sentiment that, some people, they really, really, really support Russia, and they're still wary of China. They see China as being, a little bit two-faced and benefiting from Russia's struggle, from Russia's difficulty, and they don't like that. Their perspective is that if China, China ought to be doing a lot more as far as being willing to sacrifice and willing to support Russia in more ways than they currently are.
I think that's nonsense, but I think that's an Ian question, right? That's the Russian question.
Well,
I hate to put him on the spot.
No, I think it's a valid criticism because China, unsurprisingly, has a China-centric policy, which is nothing wrong, of course, being focused on your own country. But
by the way, is it widespread where you are? This sort of China is not doing enough?
I think the Russian attitude towards China is mostly neutral. It's not, it's. I don't think there's Sinophilia. There's some of that in Russia, but it's not, overwhelming enthusiasm for them as an ally. And I think that's actually kind of a correct take. I'm not sure China is actually an ally of Russia in the normal sense, more of a back to back, partner of convenience against a mutual enemy is how I would describe them. Because I mean, it's true, especially in 2022. I mean, because it was noticeable the impact of the sanctions on the Russian economy. There was chaos, and I'd say especially back then, China was very, very
careful.
Kind of playing. Well, I would say, I think from the Chinese perspective, they would prefer to stay on good terms with the USA. So I think that's the thing to keep in mind as far as considering China an ally. I also think there's more codependent. I think it's absolutely a true statement. There's more codependency in China than with Russia, because Russia got the legs cut out from underneath them, but they didn't crash. I'm not sure the same is actually true for China, that, if the USA and all of its little lapdogs in Europe just in sync with each other cut off China, I'm not sure how China would do economically. I mean, I'm not even qualified to guess what the outcome would be, but it might not be as smooth as it was with Russia too, because part of what saved Russia is because they weren't particularly interconnected with the West to begin with. But China is very interconnected, extremely interconnected, and I think they're aware of that. That if they got Washington upset and hysterical enough, they just say, you know what, we're just going to sanction China to the same extent we sanctioned Russia. I don't know how China would do it. I think China's
Was that Nevsky? I remember this quote from Spanish Fraz, but I'm not sure who uttered it. I know it's Russian historian.
Yes, it's an old one. It's from I don't remember actually who originally said it. Maybe it, it's an old saying. Yes, it's and I think that's the saying. I think that's true for China. So China, I don't think is an ally in that sense. They're gonna, I think if you even asked people in Beijing, how do you feel about the whole Russia-China thing? I mean the people on the street. I mean just the decision makers. They'd say, well, we'd rather have good relations with both the USA and Russia. That's probably what they would say, if I had to guess.
Well, we don't know the details of the particulars of what that means. Does it mean helping with weaponry? Does it mean helping with resources? Does it mean just simply, trade in food and whatever it means? One thing you can say is China is really adverse to conflict. They will protect themselves as they're gearing up to do, but they're not interested in international conflict. They're interested in international trade, and I think that hedges them a little bit from getting too much involved in Russia and Ukraine and elsewhere in the world, the Middle East too. I just think that's the sense I get from them. They want the Belt and Trade Initiative to just take hold, and they pursue that, and they've spent trillions of dollars, and they don't want it destroyed. They don't want it undercut. So
yeah.
So
they oppose taking any, provocative steps that would, escalate the situation. And they're very prudent about that. I like what, Putin told Tucker. I mean, that was the great response. You see Tucker trying to see if he can get in there and, split off China from Russia. And Putin was like, "What? You're an idiot." He was like, "We don't get to choose our neighbors, but we have to live with our neighbors." And,
I wish Europe had more of that. Yeah.
So the only way we're going to, relate to each other is as adult neighbors. And they both understand. I mean, they're both, ideologically allied against Western imperialism, because they both oppose Western imperialism. So there's an ideological agreement. And I think China has done a lot to support the Russian economy. I mean, they doubled their oil imports from Russia. Now you can say that, well, that's self-serving, and of course it is self-serving, but it's a symbiotic relationship. It helps both parties, and really the two economies are so complementary to each other, because Russia is super rich in resources, and China is not as rich in resources. And so and of course, China, is the world's largest manufacturer. So, it's a no limit partnership, and I think that's true. And I don't think Russia is unhappy with China. I don't think Russia expects or wants China to do anything different than they're doing. So I feel that the people that are watching this from afar, and they see Russia struggling. They want China to escalate. They want China to get involved, and I'm glad China doesn't listen to them. And I believe that the Russian government itself doesn't share that view. But
I just want to say, I see Dust is driving, but he's already with us.
Oh, is he with us?
Yes, I think he's in the waiting room
Okay.
or whatever you call it. Welcome, Dust.
There he
How are
is.
you?
Hello, sorry I'm late. Had some stuff come up.
That's
So
Glad
okay.
to be here.
Thought you were
Good
on
to
the
have
road.
you.
Cool. So I just wanted to say the hubris is what shocked me about this Yellen visit, because I think Carlo probably still remembers the Japanese car invasion 70s by the 80s, but Plaza Accord basically neutering Japan and their economy, because they were undercutting US auto manufacturers, and they thought they could do the same with China. As you said, the factory of the world. That's why in the exchanges with Russia and China, I think now another record has been struck that it's mostly yuan. And yuan is what you can buy anything with that's manufactured. You can't just, it's like destroying Russia, who has the most oil and gas and wheat in the world, stuff that everybody needs. Like, want to just economically destroy China, which creates anything that's manufactured. It smells of hubris. It's like the French and the Germans, who we might talk about later. It's just very hubristic to me.
Well,
One of the complaints was that China is not doing trade in rubles, and that's due to the sanctions. And they were upset. They wanted China to go ahead and do trades in rubles and deal with the secondary sanctions that hit them. And allegedly, China didn't want to do that. But Carlo, you had something to say?
Well, I was just going to say, Dust is carrying Chinese products as we speak.
Probably.
Probably.
No,
No? Okay.
particle board made right here in North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah,
It was a fair guess. It was a fair guess. I mean, any given
It
delivery.
would have been right most of the time. Most of the time.
So, what else, guys? So we talked about the Janet Yellen visit. I mean, there's just so much hypocrisy, and she's got this carrot and stick approach that didn't get her anywhere. She failed to even have a discussion with Xi himself. Did she leave already, or is she still there?
I think she's on the way back. I think I read somewhere it was concluded, the diplomatic visit.
She liked the food so much, she thought she'd stay a little longer.
The mushrooms.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just a couple of minor ironies going on. Look at Millet and his wonderful libertarian sell everything to Wall Street. What does he call himself? He calls himself an anarcho-capitalist. How's that working out for them? 211.4% inflation rate. Wall Street buying up stuff, buying up all the national assets at fire sale prices. Those people are screwed. 50%.
You have dengue fever again in Argentina. HSBC, the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, the big bank, is disinvesting in Latin America, even in Argentina, even though it's costing them something like $1 billion. Like taking the hit because they see that this is a collapsing area. Good work, anarcho-capitalist. So he's trying to crawl back to China.
He's taking out more IMF loans, which is like poison, That's
like Egypt.
They'll just steal more assets when he can't pay them back. And one thing I said, we talk about U.S. led massacres around the world, and we never mention Argentina in 1976 and the disappeared. And I notice a lot of the other shows that I watch and a lot of articles I read, they always fail to mention Argentina, and I just wanted to get that into the air. That there was a 30,000, at least 30,000 people died under the military junta that the U.S. put in place after the ouster of Perón. So anyway, I don't want to.
The Malay government, I think, officially denies that and calls you a liar, Carlo.
Oh man, that's not the first time I've been accused of lying. Believe me.
No, but yeah, so that's one of the. It's just one of the atrocities that is not officially recognized and it's officially denied by the new government. I believe the Kirchner government, it's like history just changes depending on what government's in power, and
right,
it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and we could talk about Gaza, we could talk about lavender.
I mean, when you talk, lavender is next, but when you talk about basically massacres or genocide on an industrial scale, I failed to scroll past a video I saw recently about a lot of corpses, 300 to 400, around the destroyed Shifa hospital, and they were just like in a landfill, basically bulldozed over like rubbish. And it just ruined my stomach, my appetite for the day. I think this was yesterday. And then you get to the point where I read this in Times of Israel, and I was just shocked that Herzog, I think he's the foreign minister of Israel. I don't know, Isaac Herzog. He went he visits Rwanda for the genocide memorial, highlighting hostages and terrorism. Is that not the supreme fucking the guy in charge there? I think even the State Department agrees that in Sudan he's responsible to 3 to 4 million lives. And that he gets to go there to sort of do this victim card. And then you sent us that amazing article, shockingly amazing, in 972, I forget the magazine, but it's 3 numbers.
Yeah.
About, the World Central Kitchen convoy that was, targeted, then fled, then targeted the second car and fled, then targeted the third time, and then they all died, which was based on this, I think, misnomer, but an AI software called Lavender. Maybe you should sort of prime us on that terrific article.
Yeah, the article's by Yuval Abraham, by the way. For me, I was it was the use of AI, and it demonstrates how these algorithms can take over for human judgment, and that's been there's Ray Kurzweil talks about the singularity, when computers become more intelligent than human beings, and that they begin to make decisions that used to be made by human beings, and in this case, that's a study of that happening in real time, and as the article points out, at one point, very very close to the top, it's an 8,000 word article, so it's fairly long. But the article says, in fact, according to the sources, its influence, that's the Lavender's influence on the
target selection AI
influence on military's operation was such that they essentially treated the outputs of the AI machine, quote, as if they were a human decision. So that's a big step in my mind toward allowing AI to commit murder against human beings, let machines killing human beings. It goes back to the old saw that I've been saying for decades, that it's not that robots can be made to think like human beings. It's that human beings can be made to think like robots, and there's a correlation there that's very close with this use of lavender to that sort of thing going on, where the robotics, the AI, makes the actual decisions, then human beings just slavishly follow what the AI tells them. And that's what's really sinister about this. That's why I say it's basically the third apocalypse, along with the secular eschatologies of global climate change and nuclear weapons. Strong AI is the third apocalypse, the third eschatology. Nothing to do with religion. They get everything wrong. But it's just. But
I think
the practical sciences.
I think
and that's what this article points up in detail. So
I think that's overhyped algebra, but it doesn't matter. What's scary to me is I thought 2 seconds. You mentioned 20 seconds is the average time to validate a target by a human, right? And basically, I think the article said what they checked was whether it was a male or female. So basically, it's a social credit genocide, like the most brutal social credit in the world. And then you get a green click, and then they don't take you out in a precise manner. They drop a dumb bomb on you, you know, taking out 20, 30 people around you, which was insane. After checking whether you have a penis or not. That's how they function. And then they fire or dismiss the 2 as relay officers, you know, as a sacrifice. Like, sure.
But he covers Abraham covers the way it was done before AI, and Ian will be familiar with this, I think, to a large degree, that before AI you had to go to your superiors, and if it was a high level target, you had to go all the way to the prime minister of Israel for a target before AI, and there were far fewer of these attacks carried out, and AI has made them de rigueur. They can do a number of them in 1 minute, just by pushing buttons, and that's a serious difference. That's a serious sort of result. Now, Rosie and I, we joked over it about the singularity. We said, what if you get the singularity and this computers become so much smarter than human beings, and they decide that warfare is stupid, that not everybody not having health care is idiotic? What's wrong with this human race? That not everybody not having access to clean water is also idiotic. What's that going to do to the oligarchs and elites? If that's what results from computers being smarter than human beings, and human beings being let's just use the word stupid in relationship to AI. Now that's fanciful, because built into the algorithms are all these movements toward military hardware and larger warfare and all that sort of thing. It's part of the algorithm. I don't want to get into that, because when I argued that 30 years ago, I was pilloried for arguing that.
Elon Musk is arguing basically
I don't really want
the same today.
Redress all of that again and come on and get all this crap criticism. But I find it's the scientific method and mathematization and quantification that are behind all this. And I will say one other thing. There's a sociologist named Anatol Rapoport. Now, he was anti-Soviet, but he came up with the phrase quantifrenia. And what he meant by that was the overuse of statistics that is generated by machines in sociology, in the soft sciences. He's very firm about saying that that the hard sciences were not. He was not talking about the hard sciences. But when I first read that decades ago, I said, well, let's see if the hard sciences are involved. And I spent a lot of decades working that out. And I came to the conclusion, yes, the hard sciences are subject to quantifrenia just as much, the overuse of statistics, and in the wider sense, mathematics and quantification, that as much as, if not more than, the social sciences. And that was ridiculed. So that's the argument I'm trying to make here. I don't care where I am, I'm going to make it. It's all going to result in my mind going there. And you guys can say, you guys can have your own response.
I think with Israel, it's, I think 99. I mean, of course, there is AI being used in targeting. That is a global trend, but I think this is bullshit. I think this is an intentional and human-directed strategy Israel is doing. And they're hiding behind, it's the AI. I mean, that's classic Israel, where they pick some scenario that sounds terrible, and because it sounds terrible, people are quick to believe it. Like saying we are fine with AI shooting our missiles for us, basically, and indiscriminately killing people. But I think the truth is actually worse, that they do deliberately, because I think we have enough evidence at this point to be able to say this with a high degree of confidence, that Israel is intentionally targeting humanitarian and government and civil infrastructure in Gaza to cause a collapse. Because when there's leadership, when there's cohesion, when there is organization, the food supplies they do get is delivered, it's organized, there's something like rationing that goes on. But if you deliberately target those nodes of direction, you target the NGOs, the humanitarian NGOs, you target the police, you target the local government. What they're doing here is one, dissuading from people from wanting to set foot in Gaza, foreigners from wanting to set foot in Gaza at all, because you'll just be killed. And they're causing a civil collapse so that there's anarchy, so that there's stampedes, so that there's even more suffering. So it's a very calculated, human-directed strategy that they're doing here. I don't buy their excuse that that's all lavender, that's all just the AI.
But let me just add that holds. What you're saying is true, except that they didn't have the capability of targeting these people before AI. AI is really the instrument that they have for developing all these targets so rapidly. That's another dimension of it.
They do. But here's the thing. Humanitarian workers show up in Gaza. They report to the IDF, hey, here's our grid coordinates. This is a humanitarian group that's delivering food in Gaza. The IDF says, okay, thanks. They input those coordinates and drop a freaking missile on it. Yeah. So yes,
Al Jazeera,
that's a good example of it.
Al Jazeera, which is a Qatari outlet, had this opinion piece. I forget by whom, but this was the title: "Israel's message: Don't feed the Palestinians." And I think that's absolutely knocked it in the head. This topic of the world.
You guys were touching on what I wanted to touch on. I'm not sure how the AI helps Israel. Maybe it does help with quicker targeting, and maybe it is handy as a scapegoat. But it's still a human-created AI. The humans put in all the algorithms that create the AI and decide how the AI targets. So it's decided by a human, and then they unleash it, and then it's a little bit autonomous. But then after it decides a target, I mean, it's still the humans have to agree that, yes, let's hit that target. And then the humans hit that target. So to me, it's not a scapegoat at all, because humans are ultimately responsible, not just for the creation of AI, but for allowing it to dictate what the targets are. So it's still humans in control. And it's, we haven't gone to, what was that show where Skynet takes over? I forget.
Terminator.
Yeah, we're not living in Terminator times.
Yes.
But we have a great guest, Dust James, and we've not let him got a word in edgewise, and we really do want to hear from him. We don't want to put him on the spot, though. I mean, he's happy to listen to, I know. But any thoughts on the whole Israel debacle, Dust, the whole Israel genocide?
I don't think AI is the major problem. Sounds like another tool. The problem is imperialism, and then their tools of white supremacy, ethnic cleansing, militarism, etc., where they just mass murder people because it helps maintain profits in the region, control in the region, instability in the region, which helps them keep markets, put down competitors, etc. It's very obvious. It's basic. You can just look at basic macro socioeconomics and understand exactly what's going on with Israel. That's about it.
You're right. You talk right when you have to hop out and unload some stuff. Is that right?
No, my seatbelt is giving me an issue. I had to move it around.
So yeah, did you remember when I guess it was 6 white people died working for the World
Central Kitchen,
and that was the only time that Israel decided to say, yes, we made a grave mistake. Officially, they used the term grave mistake. And, the 30,000 women and children weren't a grave mistake. But when the white people...
Oh, also the other 198 workers, they weren't a grave mistake.
Yeah. No, so that just corroborates, the white supremacist angle that you brought up. It highlights it. It underscores it.
Yeah, because these were Brits and Poles, Australians... Canadian American, something like that. Yeah.
One other dimension, going back to the AI, is
Can I reply to you on the AI? Because Gregor put it very nice. I mean, in
Yeah.
the city where Ian is, you get these cute little Yandex delivery vehicles, right? Taking meals and stuff to people. The same happens on the streets of China. That's what AI is used for in Russia and China, whereas Israel uses it to select who to kill. So I think the point is valid. It's who writes it, what sort of cause, what it's already determined what it's going to be used for. That's the main difference, not AI itself. But go ahead.
Yep. But I'm just saying that AI is it's growing leaps and bounds, and it's now in the news where I've been studying it back when Newell and Simon and Minsky and McCarthy and all these nitwits were taking billions of dollars from the U.S. taxpayer to explore AI. But what I wanted to add was they call one of the programs under Lavender, as Ben pointed out before the show began, was called "Where's Daddy?"
Where's Daddy? Yeah.
You can't get more personal than that. What it means is what they targeted. This is according to the article, and I'm sure it's accurate. The way they targeted low-level members of Hamas was in their homes when they were with their families, because that's when it was easier for the algorithms to determine the location of a Hamas member when it was his home. Obviously, because it's going to have an address, and that's where his family was. So that's why so many of these bomb attacks wiped out not only the Hamas member but his entire family and his extended family, because these people, the people in Hamas, have that wonderful link to their extended families, which I would love to have, which I don't have. I don't have anyone that wants me around them in my family. So I say fuck them, and that's my relationship to my family, because they're what I call, I don't include my brother, but my extended family, what I call American ninnies, and they don't know anything, and they don't care to know anything, but and then they're MAGA and they're RussiaGate people and idiots. But I don't know what my general point here was, but AI is on the rise. But when you use a phrase like "Great Daddy," where's Daddy? You are getting really personal and really nasty and really
it's nasty. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's really cynical and vicious.
As long as we're here,
that comports with what Ian is saying and you're saying too, Ben. Yeah.
As long as we're here in West Asia, formerly the Middle East, right? We know there's 30,000 people, the massacre's going on. Netanyahu said he set a date, which he didn't give to the interviewers, but set a date for the offensive in Rafah. So he's going to go in, and if he doesn't, then Ben Gvir threatened to take his place. Basically, if you don't go, we'll get you out of power, because that's the promise. That's what Israeli society needs. And at the same time, who took Germany to the World Court on
South
assisting?
Germany. Who took with Germany?
No, maybe it was Peru, Colombia. I'm sorry, I know it's Latin America. I'll quickly find it.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's a whole problem with different voices in Europe and in America saying we shouldn't transfer more weapons. And I just wanted to show you something that just drove me mad, as long as we're on the topic. And you probably know Nigel Farage, the big Brexit guy in Britain. And this is what he had to say after it was maybe possible that we shouldn't send more weapons to Israel. Check this out.
So horrible to see 3 British aid workers killed in Gaza this week, and now big demands for us to stop giving weapons to Israel. Do you know, folks, in every war, there are lots of people killed by so-called friendly fire. We've had it ourselves when we fought alongside the Americans. Israel is fighting for its very survival as a nation. You know, what happened on October the 7th is going to happen again and again unless the Hamas terrorists are beaten. I know what I'm saying to you is very much a minority voice at the moment. Israel being painted out at all levels to be evil, to be bad. But remember what they're up against. They're up against the Iranian-backed terrorists, and they're fighting for their very survival. I don't think we should boycott weapons to Israel.
And that was it. And
how brave.
I feel already worse for watching that again.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that to us, Ben.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Shaniqua has Carlos back,
Thank you, Shaniqua.
and she
Nicaragua.
a lot
Thank
to
you,
me.
Yasha.
yeah, Nicaragua was who took.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Germany is defending themselves today, saying they're innocent. Yesterday was when Nicaragua made the case. Thank you very much, Yasha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that Nigel Farage, he's such a loser. And I mean,
Boris
he
Johnson
thought he
said
could-
it's madness and it's threat to the Western world to stop sending weapons to Israel. That's what Boris Johnson said. He's worse.
What's mystifying to me is about Israel is here you have in the entire world there are only 15 million Jews, and a vast number of them are not Zionists. They're surrounded by Muslims, which is the second largest religion in the world. With the number is something like 1.7 billion people. If you have 15 million people on the planet, and there are 17 billion, 1.7 billion people around you, you'd think you'd want to get along with those people rather than, it's just common sense.
That's what Putin said about
I
China.
admire
Exactly.
the
We're neighbors.
intelligence of the Jewish people and their centrality in the sciences and art and literature and all of that. I admire that a great deal. But in this framework of where you want to maintain this close-knit tribe, and they call themselves the tribe, why the hell don't you try to get along with a group of people that could dissolve your existence in a heartbeat with just sheer numbers? Sheer numbers. It just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
These idiots.
Johnny Houthi, the Houthis, as in the Yemeni armed forces, have gathered 400,000 people who are ready to fight. They had 200,000 just a couple of months ago. To counterbalance that horrifying shit, I think you will probably enjoy Marwa Osman, who I didn't know you probably already did. And she had this to share about Iran. I think
When you hear
it's a good counterbalance.
such a rhetoric, I advise you, Sarah, to ask one question. What has Iran done so bad that you hate it so much? Genocide? Have they occupied someone? Have they invaded someone? Have they stolen their resources? Have they effectively committed genocide, massacres? What did they do? Just give us the information that you have. What did they do? What did they do? Mahsa Amini, she was killed because of an illness. You don't want to believe? Don't believe. Find a wall, hit your head with it. Never believe. We don't care if you believe or not. What do you have against Iran except one thing? It refuses to normalize with Israel. It helps any kind of native resistance stand on its feet and fight back. Righteousness. It stands with what is right. It stands with the natives against colonialists. If that is what is really bothering you, then look in that mirror again. You're no longer an activist. You are an active agent of the empire.
Kudos to DD Geopolitics, Sarah, and I think that also made Dust's point pretty eloquently.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself.
Yeah, totally agree, 100%. So, in the news right now, everybody's kind of waiting to see what Iran's response will be to that Israel attack on the embassy in Damascus, which, damaged part of the embassy. We suggested last episode that, Iran's response will be measured and it might be quite a bit delayed because as Israel waits for the response, they're kind of hunkered down and it's hurting their economy. You got people in bomb shelters. They're jamming all the GPS. It's interfering with their normal life. And so Iran might, keep that going for a while before they do respond. But then you got Nasrallah. You've got other people saying the response is going to come and it's going to be serious. What is your guys' speculation?
Well, I just want to say one thing about the young woman who was just up there.
Yes.
I mean, the history of that is the overthrow of Mossadegh, the rise of the Shah, and you want to talk about massacres? Savak. How many tens of thousands of Iranians were murdered by the CIA's creation called Savak the intelligence arm of the Shah. And then when the people had enough and they took the Americans hostage and upset the apple cart of a U.S. Economic and political monopoly over Iranian whatever you want to call it, substance. That's when the U.S. had to step back in. That's where the hostility arises. If U.S., I mean, it's hard for people to believe, but the U.S. wants complete control over everybody, and that goes for Iran. So the imperialists. It's the imperial notion that they can control everybody, even at the late stage when it's so obvious. That's dissolving.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from Dust, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounded really good. The woman who spoke, I want to respond to Carlo earlier that it's very obvious that Zionism doesn't have anything to do with the Jewish people or Jewish religion. It's a creation of Western imperialism, and white supremacy, for economic gain of the monopoly capitalists. That's
British
all. It's
at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're completely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have trouble with people combating Iran over, differences in social issues, which is really nerve-wracking when the United States is, well, essentially the U.S. government and the people that control him, the capitalists, are responsible for the majority of people living in poverty, mass genocide and massacres. But you're going to attack this country because you don't like it, doesn't fit up to your democratic ideal or social vision. And I think it's ridiculous, the attacks on Iran and the way they manipulate our allies to look as if they're enemies.
If no less an outlet than the Atlantic Council runs headlines about women's rights in Iran, women's rights in Turkey now that Erdogan's been challenged, immediate suspicion is just the appropriate response, I think.
I have a wonderful weapon for that. I point out that in Afghanistan, under Najibullah and his predecessor, under Soviet tutelage, women were given full rights.
There's pictures of how Afghanistan looked at the time. Yeah.
Right, and the U.S. destroyed that country through the Mujahideen, and the Mujahideen went back, got rid of all of that. First, they pressured Najibullah, then they killed him in the streets, and then they revoked all women's rights, and that was under the U.S. tutelage, under Brzezinski's plan, Charlie Wilson's war, or whatever the shit you want to call that motherfucking two-faced piece of bullshit. And I have a good friend who won't meet with me now because his girlfriend says, "Oh, that never happened." So I did my usual thing, and I went online to find articles which I'd read, prior to that, and most of them I couldn't find any longer. So I would just want to point out that the internet has been sanitized of even that point of view to a large extent. Though I did find a couple and I sent them along, but it still won't meet with me. So, that's what I'm talking about. Ninnies, even when the evidence is right there, that even when history points it up, there's something about America being, it's like the Pope, infallible in this regard, that lingers in people's minds, even in people who are sometimes critical of U.S. policy. So,
I mean, if you look at that Norwegian piece of wood, I think Pepe calls Jens Stoltenberg, right? The still current General Secretary of NATO. He keeps insisting that this growing axis of evil is now Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. They can hardly be any different, these four countries. But, there's always going to be bleeding heart causes in those countries to destabilize. Always.
Yeah. And I hate the LGBTQ community being used politically like that too.
I think
they don't want it. They don't fucking want it.
At least the Hungarians I've talked to, they hate being used in this way too, and that's a good development.
Really, Bob.
So, well, during the Cold War, of course, the biggest threat was, global socialism. And so the West identified these, radical extremists as the best weapon against socialism and against, the progressive values of gender equality, just basically the progressive socialism, and so in these extremists were proliferated and created, with the help of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. The West was a big funder of these madrasas where people as young children get indoctrinated into these really intolerant ideologies, perversions. Really, I would say they're perversions of Islam. And then they were weaponized against socialism. So they were weaponized against Nasser in Egypt. They were weaponized against, like you were saying,
The
Najibullah
Soviet Union
in Afghanistan, because these leaders were the real threat. Secular Arab nationalism was a big threat to ally with the Soviet Union against the West, and so it had to be undermined. And their tool to undermine it was these Islamic radicals, and that's where you get the beginnings of Al Qaeda. And ISIS today. These are groups that are groups for hire that have intricate ties, long-standing ties to Western intelligence, and they're just useful tools. And again, there's the narco terrorists in Central and South America that have been used the same way to destabilize legitimate governments that really are interested in sovereignty and benefiting the lives of their people and raising living standards. So if you want to do that, you're going to get overthrown, and we're going to use Nazis, we're going to use Islamic terrorists, or we're going to use narco terrorists to destabilize you. That's just been the history of Western imperialism for 75 years.
Yeah, and that kind of circles us back to Ian's living place, where today, breaking news, the Crocus terrorists, the investigative committee that's gone around, hundreds of people, has not only directly tied it to military intelligence in Kiev, but also Burisma Holdings. I don't know how censored that will be, but that's the Biden family enterprise, which I think is serious news. So you can no longer hide behind these. It looks to me like the Russians are making that point increasingly. And that's good news. While to me, it really looks like the Ukraine project is ending. I mean, just to share one latest piece of news, Zelensky insists, I'll actually play that. It's a very short clip of him saying, well, if we lose, there's going to be terrible, terrible things happening, which is right here.
Press does not help Ukraine. Ukraine will lose the war. And we need to find a public format for this. If Ukraine loses the war, other states will be attacked.
Yeah, fuck off, Green Goblin. Nobody cares. But at the same time, as this little fella is doing this crap, he is asking for 25 Patriot missile systems. That means there's 7 or 8 launchers, a command and control. Probably Ian knows this better. And I just quickly checked how many the U.S. Army operates, and it's 16. And I think he might want more than what exists in the world. What does that mean? While, of course, the fab bombs. I mean, what Russia has been doing is slowly but steadily increasing the speed of everything. I mean, it took a shorter amount of time to take Avdiivka than it took to take Bakhmut. And I think the same is happening in Chasiv Yar now, which is the last little bastion there with these fab 1,500, 5,000, 3,000 huge bombs. The whole thing is crumbling, and obviously the Brits and the French are panicking. They both went to Biden. Come on, please sign the 60, however many billion, because otherwise we're going to sign this new entente. We're going to send troops. But, while this thing is over, I don't know where exactly I was going to take that, but I just wanted to squeeze it in. I see when we've hit the hour mark. But
Gregor brought up how the second anniversary of the Bucha PSYOP did not really, it didn't make a big splash. I mean, I think they were hoping to remind everybody and make way more hay out of that PSYOP than they were able to. So I think that was like...
it was also like a bush that Zelensky hid behind when everybody was talking about Crocus and the terrorist attack on Moscow.
Right.
It was 2-year anniversary, sort of stuff, which the Russian foreign ministry said they still haven't released the names. They've been asking for it for that much time.
No, it was a full-on psychological operation. A couple days after the Russians left, they send in, the intelligence arm of Ukraine's intelligence unit, and they set up this narrative. It was sheer narrative creation. I remember a lot of the bodies had the white armbands, which was indicative of people who supported, the Russian Federation.
Collaborators, they would say, and some tied behind their backs. These photos, these videos still exist.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, but it's interesting. Bush was ignored. The Crocus investigation is ignored. Actually, it's interesting. Yesterday, there's more and more arrests. I don't think all of them are directly related to the attack. I think they're cracking down on corruption and gaps in the system that should have honestly been corrected already, but weren't. I do think we're going to see, unfortunately, we're going to see for visitors like me. I mean, I already have better documents now, but I think we're going to see the end of those very generous 3-year tourist visas in Russia, which I got when I came here, which is a very good, very nice visa. But it's amazing because I'll read stuff in the Russian news that's happening in the investigation, people who got arrested, and just these crackdowns in general. And there's just no mention of it in the Western press at all.
Yeah, none. I can only see it on Runet, on the Russian internet. Yeah.
But the best people support what I said right after it happened. That not only was the Ukrainian government involved, but the U.S. intelligence was involved, and probably British intelligence, and that's supported now by Scott Ritter, Larry Johnson, who did that for a living. And even the usually cautious Alistair Crook, as well as a number of other people have.
Smells British to me. I think Alistair said that as well.
Yeah. So I'm in good company here, and I feel very comfortable with my conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
For the non-believers out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Medvedev, the third category of people involved are the sponsors, the one who ordered this, and they are collaborators in this or something, and no one will escape justice. Obviously, he's the mad dog. He could say these things, but I kind of get the impression this is getting a serious thing in Russia. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's interesting that they did tie Burisma to it. I'm waiting, and I want to hear more from the Russian Foreign Ministry or the press secretary. But hopefully we'll have some more news, and if they give us more news, social media at least won't be silent. I mean, the mainstream press will be silent, but we'll hear all the usual suspects proclaiming it, which is where we need to go these days. I mean, the news is essentially worthless. It's counterproductive to watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. So, everybody at this point should be getting their actual information from, trusted people on social media, such as ourselves. And, those people, Scott Ritter, Larry Johnson, there's 100 of them I could list off the top of my head that, thank goodness that we got,
I mean, just
voices of sanity. Go ahead.
Just to undermine that point, the British press in particular, half of it already attributed the recent attacks on the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe, to Russia, to the Kremlin, or to Putin himself. Half of them already did that based on Ukraine. It's under Russian control. And the IAEA
themselves. They shell themselves. Yes.
Just like whenever it was a year ago, the IAEA condoned the drone attack, but they didn't. Condemned the drone attack, but they didn't condemn anyone in particular. It's a mystery. It's like Nord Stream, and Dust is back with it.
Well, now that we have Dust back, let's ask him a question here.
Yeah, go ahead, Carlo.
Kind of domestic politics. Biden's in big trouble, and he's in big trouble over Gaza.
Yes,
which is eroding his vote, his possibilities of winning. But and another reason for that is Trump is obviously a huge supporter, at least in at least on what is it today, Tuesday? At least for the last 5 minutes about supporting Israel. So, what do you think effect that's going to have on the election, Dust?
I think the oligarchs are going to win. Either American oligarchs, monopoly capitalists, and banks will win the election regardless of which of the duopoly is elected. and that we should focus on organizing our communities.
And okay,
Like always, that's my response. Always.
what
Like,
about Alec?
What do you want me
What
to
about
add?
Alec organizing your communities?
Alec is just another tool of the imperialists.
Right, exactly. But it's actually it was basically funded and founded by the Koch brothers. So they're now against Trump. Does that have any? Have you seen any effect there? Or
I mean, they're gonna hit their dogs every now and then. They'll they use some people as their tools. They push them out when they don't want them. They bring the ones in they want.
Oh,
I
Nicole
heard
Shanahan.
somewhere that Trump was promising billionaires lower taxes.
Right.
I heard that recently. So, which of course, confirms Dusk's correct analysis that it's heads they win, tails we lose. Both teams play for the same side.
Yeah, certainly feel like that in USA. By the way, I don't know. This is a question from Christy. I think Nicole Shanahan is the VP pick for RFK Jr. And all I know about that she's an Asian-looking woman and she's very rich. I don't really have an opinion further than that because I don't know who she is.
It's an interesting pick just because she's got no name recognition. I know I've heard like Tulsi Gabbard maybe had turned down an offer and she was maybe hoping that Trump gives her the nod. Who knows? This is just speculation and kind of rumor mongering. But I'm surprised. I don't know who Nicole Shanahan is either, and that makes it a surprising pick because you'd think he would at least pick someone with some name recognition. But I got disinterested with RFK Jr. when he just went full all Israel.
Same.
And so I'm sorry. I mean, even if you're just doing it to be politically viable and you don't really mean it, I get that. But I mean, I can't be sure that's true. And so no, I'm not interested.
6 months, guys.
I don't understand how y'all backed RFK Jr. that long with the anti-immigrant stuff. No. Okay, you waited till he came out against Israel. What about the blatant racism, the weird ass conspiracies, the weird anti-COVID stuff, the anti-immigrant bigotry? That guy has been an obvious establishment pawn of one of the biggest establishment families from the beginning. Like I don't
say,
I never backed him.
Just for myself. That within the first week of me knowing about this guy, I saw his stance on Israel. So it was a very fast process.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, the Shanahan woman. I read a short article on AOL, and I think her attraction is it's a rags to riches story, at least the way they're presenting it in the press. So that has a lot of impact on all the people in on welfare and living in trailers and don't have
only
jobs
in America, the greatest country in the world. Is that possible, Carlo?
Yes.
I know.
Microsoft was built in a garage. You know this.
And you could sit with my relatives in Cleveland, drinking the beers around an open fire, and they will tell you they don't have a pot to piss in, but they'll tell you that that it's the greatest country in the world because look at somebody like this woman went from rags to riches.
Yeah. Well, look at Oprah.
And they never follow how many people got murdered in the process for those people to get those riches. It never occurs to them, since they're not wholesale serial killers. They're willing to kill people in the thousands. That they're never going to make it.
Shaniqua. Okay. So yeah, rags to real riches.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Shaniqua.
That's the cost of the VP spot, just $4 million. Man,
damn!
I could have got a second mortgage and maybe gotten on the ticket.
Yeah, I mean, as for Trump, as you said on Tuesday, he supports this. He had over the weekend the Ukraine peace plan, which involved giving up Crimea and land, and then it was fake news by Sunday. So, yeah, it's campaign season. I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah. Now, the thing with these peace plans is that, there's the Zelensky 10-point peace plan, which was a farce. There's the Chinese peace plan. And the thing is that
their surrender. Yeah.
Well, there's that, and even the Chinese idea that there's just a no winners peace plan. Well, Russia's winning; they don't need to take anything less than winning. You know, the window for a no winners deal came and went in the first.
We don't. I
of the
don't know if it was
conflict.
Putin or Lavrov. Someone said we don't need to stop just because you're running out of ammo. I think I'm quoting that right. Do you know who? Yeah.
Yeah, freezing. Even this idea of freezing. That's been popular, I think, for almost 12 months now. Well, we can freeze the conflict. Well, why would Russia want to freeze the conflict? You want to freeze the conflict because you're running out of bullets, but
yeah, that's why Mr. Lecornu, the defense minister of France, called Shoigu in that panicking. That was basically, can we please freeze the conflict, maybe go back to an Istanbul Turkish mediation solution. And in Germany, since we already mentioned that Zelensky wants 25 Patriot system. Hello, Spaz. I just want to play. I'll wait for you because we have a short clip of Mr. Scholz puffing himself up. And of course, we can do this. That's how bad the panic is. So before that, I'll mention there was this big article written by Foreign Minister Lord Cameron of Britain. Sorry, his Foreign Secretary, and Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné of France, written in the Telegraph, which was fantastic. It's about how strong we are. We cannot let Ukraine fail. We cannot let Russia win. It's basically a plan to attack Russia in Ukraine. So, Baerbock, Miss 360, 720, the stupidest foreign minister in the world, said, well, we don't actually have any patriots, so we will go looking at international stocks in Europe. And in the meantime, Scholz, in English, so at least we don't need subtitles, had this to say to puff himself up. Check this out.
Stated that the war in Ukraine ends the moment that President Putin decides to withdraw his troops. However, he will only take that decision if he realizes that he cannot win the war on the battlefield, that he cannot dictate an unjust peace, that time doesn't play in his favor. Therefore, our support for Ukraine is key to restoring peace in Europe. We will uphold it for as long as it takes.
That's him. That's none other than the worst chancellor in the history of Germany.
I hate to be racist, but it's so funny to see someone with the German accent saying, "Just withdraw your troops," and
Ursula scares me worse because she does the Hitlerite hand gestures as well. She gets angry.
Not to mention Mercedes-Benz is moving its operations to the U.S. So Germany's being taken, and it's giving Biden a little bit of a boost because he's been able to do what Trump didn't do at any great level, and that's revive American industry by destroying Europe's industry.
Yeah. As well as Taiwan's. TSMC just announced their big Arizona plant, which will be their end because they cannot efficiently do high-tech chips in Arizona with the workforce there. But they're going to do this. They're going to spend the money on that instead of R&D. Good, compliant proxies.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, I can't understand Germany's position. They're destroying themselves at Nord Stream. We have Leo on, and he's sitting in the dark in a coat and a hoodie to stay warm and not have his electric bill be through the roof. It's amazing.
Well, I remember Ian was a guest months and months and months ago, maybe even a year ago, and he said, Europe's decided to swallow the suicide pill, and that was absolutely correct. It's just unconscionable how the Europeans allow their puppet leaders to throw them under the bus like that. But that gets me into a rant on liberal democracy. If anybody has a few minutes,
soapbox.
I was just thinking about, there's this pretense. There's the liberal narrative that the West is a liberal democracy that really cherishes and cares about principles. So what principles are those? Like free markets, freedom of speech, sovereignty, non-interference with other countries,
human rights.
There was a handful of these principles that that connects these liberal democracies in the West. But really, I mean, that's a facade, right? Because it's essentially a dictatorship. It's an oligarchy of the wealthy elite and they just use this pretense that they are democratic and embrace these principles to deceive the masses and to keep the masses from really recognizing the reality of the situation. But what happens is when these governments, when their interests become under threat, that mask starts to fall away, right? That mask falls away, and we get to see the actual operating principles that really exist. And we realize freedom of speech, human rights, non-interference in other countries, all of that, those bullshit liberal principles that they only pretend to embrace, get thrown under the bus real quick. And the reality of straight up imperialism and capitalist dictatorship are apparent for everyone to see. We see that with them supporting the genocide in Israel. We see that with them, saying, "Hey, free trade is out the window," with Janet Yellen going to
China. Yep.
Going to China, and then democracy. I mean, that's never been anything that's been worth anything in this country. And then abroad, we've overthrown many democracies and propped up dictators all the time for the past 75 years. Anyway, I mean, it's obvious. I hope everybody listening is rolling their eyes thinking, we know, but there's some people that don't know, and they really...
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Manifest Destiny and the Monroe Doctrine. Manifest Destiny and the Monroe Doctrine. Billy Bob, you live in what used to be Mexico.
Yeah.
Your city ends in an O. That's Spanish. That's
true. It's true.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, what could be more obvious? And what goes back to the American people? Why can't they get that through their fucking heads? Come on, Dust, tell us why Americans don't understand the real principles that are driving their country.
The most expensive propaganda apparatus that has ever existed in human history.
That's true.
Yeah. Effective, the biggest, most effective, the most heavily invested in. That's the problem, is the propaganda apparatus. And what can we do? I mean, they're going to be, censorship. They're increasing the censorship.
I mean, just to illustrate the point that it's not even just having capital in charge, because Hungary is a capitalist country, has for 30 years. So is Slovakia. And I just saw Mr. Röntgen, he's the head of the CDU, the Christian Democrats in Germany, said, expel them from the EU, just because we don't want to send weapons and ammunition and troops to Ukraine. That's how bad it is. Yeah, we are as corrupt as Rome or Paris. Of course, there's corruption here. Of course, we have our little local oligarchs. But just this little stepping out of line and you get pilloried. Fuck free speech, fuck non-interference. There's already a kind of a regime change operation underway in Budapest. I don't think it's going to succeed. I haven't seen evidence of it. That's how bad it is. You fall completely in line. The dream was the multipolar world. It looks like I love the Rand 2. That's why I put it up.
Me too.
Oh shit! I lost it because of that.
Sorry. I got distracted when I got praised, so I wanted to focus on that. I apologize.
Go ahead,
yeah,
Dan.
sorry. China and Russia is working on a multipolar world, but the failing hegemon is doing its best to turn it into a bipolar world. It's either with us or against us, and that's it. Lines are drawn. New. What do you call it? Iron curtain. Unfortunately.
Note of optimism, though, when reality just contradicts their narrative, their propaganda narrative, that's when their propaganda apparatus will cease to lose its efficacy, its effectiveness. So, and I think we're seeing that more and more with each passing day, the difference between what's really happening and what they pretend is happening. Eventually, we're going to get to a Baghdad Bob scenario where, everybody's just going to be laughing at them. So I think that's possible. I think we're heading in that direction. And I think, as time goes on, we're getting closer and closer. So I truly believe that.
In Europe, especially.
I can have a caveat to Carlos. I think there is a mistrust. Like, it seems like everyone is just believing the system. They go with the left, both right-wing narratives, the Democrat or Republican. But if you look at even the way they're manipulating people, like Trump or Sanders, the sheepdog, they're upping their ante, and even their controlled pawns need to be supposedly outsiders and opposition. because less and less people are believing the narrative, and less people are trusting the narrative. The problem is they don't know where to turn to.
Yeah.
So the establishment is creating figures like Trump to put out there, so all that energy, that mistrust, just goes right back into the system.
I do
good. That's a great
sadly
analogy.
agree,
Yeah.
because you got Boeings falling out of the sky. I think there was like this engine cover fell off of one of them. You got
Mhm.
bridges collapsing, but now it looks like everything is about abortion in America. At least for the last 5 days, the entire conversation around the election was about abortion, from what I've read. I don't
Well,
really.
we can't talk about more than one thing at once. That's just not. That's not
No
Yeah.
multitasking
possible.
there.
You
Yeah.
can't multitask. I think what Trump did with the abortion issues, he took kind of a middle of the road.
Yeah,
stance
and it
on
outraged both parties.
Yeah. I think that for him, that for his campaign, it's probably the smartest thing to do. And honestly, it's the most, because, the big elephant in the room with it, when it comes to abortion and actually almost every domestic issue in the USA, is that's so polarized. Because in a normal country, the abortion issue would have been answered back in the 1970s. Even countries that are much more conservative than the USA, like Turkey or Russia, have codified abortion. Here's what you can do, and here's what you can't do. There's very clear rules set up. But that doesn't help for the American political system, which just wants hysteria on both sides.
Yeah.
And if an issue is resolved,
Noise.
you can't, if you don't elect me, those bad people on the other side are going to ban abortion, or those bad people on the other side are going to legalize.
Are you
abortion.
suggesting abortion is a wedge issue?
Yes.
You don't say.
Oh, the other news was
Right.
student loans. So obviously bribing youngsters. That's the Biden plan. It looks like right now.
Yeah.
They didn't pass it. He said he was going to pass it last time, and the courts turned it down.
Of course, but now it's
I'm still mad
campaign
about
season.
that. Now we're supposed to elect him again. When the last time he promised it got turned down. What the?
If you don't elect Biden again, you're going to get Trump. I mean, it's so nice Trump ran again. So Biden can be like, I didn't do anything good for you in my first term, but but if you don't reelect me,
It's like this.
You'll get the fascist. You'll get the
You get
fascist.
It's
Nazi
like this
Germany.
jobs thing that Biden is touting. 95% of those jobs are part-time jobs.
Mhm.
There's only 5% of them are
Yeah,
full-time.
I've
jobs.
seen some ad campaigns from Biden on YouTube. He's bought some YouTube space, and he was like, "Look around, see what all we've accomplished." Like, I'm like, yeah, he's a little bit out of touch. It made me laugh out loud. That
A little bit out of touch, he says.
that ad campaign. Just look around, see all the things that we've accomplished in the last 3-4 years. It was like, okay, I'm not sure anybody agrees with that, but
No.
The economy is fine. You're stupid. The numbers are true. It's not your feelings. That's pretty much the financial press.
Yeah, so I just want to I want to drop some names because I live in Washington, which is called the Hollywood for ugly people, and I bought Paul Linebarger's piano, and also known as Cordwainer Smith, who wrote science fiction books, and he's the guy. He worked for the State Department. He's really CIA. He wrote Psychological Warfare, and so while I was buying his books, I split it with Larry McMurtry, the guy that wrote Lonesome Dove and Terms of Endearment and Brokeback Mountain and all that stuff. Well, he had a used and rare bookstore here. I'm name dropping, guys. He had a used bookstore here in Georgetown, in Washington. I think it might still be running, but he's passed away. And anyway, in that I bought a copy. I bought Paul Linebarger's copy of Psychological Warfare, and as I was reading it, it's supposed to be geared for other countries. It's supposed to be directed at other countries, but I'm reading it and I say, wow, this is what goes back to what Dust was saying. This has tremendous application to domestic propaganda. I mean, it's virtually the same as what's used on foreign countries. It's Voice of America, that sort of thing.
It's turned inwards, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really does hold up in that regard. and he would know because that was his job. Him and Ed Lansdale. So anyway,
Let me share a quote. You mentioned domestic propaganda, and that triggered this quote. I really like it. I posted it on my Facebook wall. It says, "Every film is political. Most political of all are those that pretend not to be. Entertainment movies. So the entertainment movies that pretend not to be political are the most political of all. They are the most political films there are because they dismiss the possibility of change. In every frame, they tell you everything's fine the way it is. They are a continual advertisement for things as they are." So I like that. I like that quote.
yeah.
Hopefully, it was comprehensible when I said it.
No, I think that's largely true. I like Alexei de Tocqueville, what he said. He said, "I have met no people with less independence of mind than the Americans." And that was back in 1826. I think it was 1826. So yeah, it's been going on for a long time. It's propaganda.
Did he coin the term ninnies, or was that you?
That was de Tocqueville.
That was de Tocqueville. Okay.
Yeah, I won't lay that on him. But that's an interesting statement. I mean,
Come on, I'm in a frame with 4 Americans, so that's a very
Pablo.
general statement. I don't agree that all Americans are ninnies. I can't. But I hear where you're coming from.
I don't know. I vehemently disagree with calling all Americans ninnies. I think we have a very horrible enemy that's very powerful, very persuasive, and has the resources to be persuasive. And I think there is art, culture, music, integrity, and community within the American people that can be built upon to go against it. But this is the core of empire. Well, we got an uphill battle. And we really got to, lean on the example of other people that are outside of the influence that are showing the way forward in the third world.
We went through this with Regis when he was on the show last time, and even the time before that. He has 3 sons that are all going to vote for Trump, and they're all gun owners and all that stuff. But the point is, I made to him last time was, look, we were talking about Gaza and the great outrage that existed among the people who were protesting Gaza. And I pointed out that, well, look, Regis, if you and I took my camera, my old camera, down to this protest, and we put a microphone under the mouths of these people, 95% of them would be for Ukraine. So I'm sorry, there's a limit. There's a goddamn limit.
Do you know that
I will tolerate of stupidity among the American people?
Do you know that there was this short clip of a MAGA woman interview, and they asked her, "Would you vote for Putin in the U.S. election?" And she was raving about absolutely yes. So I'm just saying, I don't like generalizations, even among the MAGA folk.
And the big fear is that Trump's going to employ a different Russia policy. That he's gonna force Zelensky into some kind of negotiated
abandon
settlement.
NATO,
But,
Europe.
There's no indication of that given his prior policies.
It's meaningless. What would you vote for Putin? What would he do? What would his policies be? Same with Trump and Biden. You ask people, well, more on the Biden side, people know what his policies are or what the warped positions lies he's telling about his policies. But the Trump people don't even have an idea of what Trump's policies are because Trump doesn't have any policies.
No, this is the U.S. election season. You're not supposed to talk about policy.
Well, that's cleverly crafted decades emotional manipulation of people who are seeing worse and worse conditions.
You're not a bunch of 4-year-olds anymore. You're supposed to overcome.
We also have subpar education, specifically in the South and other regions. We have an onslaught against this. What are we gonna do about it? We gonna sit around and say, "Oh, we're all gonna die," or how are we gonna change that? We need the people. We only get one working class. We only get one people. Well, we got to do better.
I think that's a good positive.
I don't have much time to do better. Maybe just days. Maybe
just give what you got to us, and then we'll use it. To try.
You don't
Keep
want to
trying.
use it.
I'm not
I
giving
want
up.
to go
I'm not
out.
giving
I
up.
want to have a big audience. I want to be in a position to talk to a lot of people and call them ninnies and have them hear what I'm saying.
How
they're
do
not
they hear
gonna
what you're
do that,
saying?
Whatever.
Calling them ninnies, man.
If
Using-
that makes you
Fuck 'em.
happy,
Fuck 'em.
shaming the idiots
Okay.
into
it wouldn't
into
make me
doing
happy.
better and informing themselves. But I'm
What
not
I'll
sure.
do is I'll
Nothing
take.
else has worked. I'm
I'll listen to what you got to
75 years
say.
old. Nothing else has worked. I carried this 25-pound camera and 15 pounds of batteries around 6 to 8 hours a day to show them what Reagan was doing to Central America. It didn't work. They don't even know. They can't even spell Zelaya. They can't. They didn't know. They don't know what the FMLN was. They don't even know what the Sandinistas are. Fuck
I
it.
think
I can
I think-
carry the camera in my pocket and live stream it simultaneously. Maybe I can be building other networks. I'll take what
Well,
you got to
try
say
that.
and I'll
Try that.
translate it into a way that people can better understand without calling them nitties. That might
Well, you
maybe that
try
would
it.
work.
You tell me how that.
well, I
worked out.
enjoyed the
How
exchange.
that
I think
worked out in 30 years if I'm around.
I think in Carlo's world, the average American thinks of Zelaya that maybe she starred in the Doom movie. I think that's the ninny status. Yeah. But Shanika also rather enjoyed that exchange. So did I. We're going at an hour and 30 minutes. I don't know if you guys had a,
Well, I wanted to thank Dust for joining us. He's taken time out of his work day, and we truly appreciate it. We're going to have him back. Maybe we can have you and Suarez back, and we could talk some Haiti. I know Suarez he's an expert on the Caribbean and Central South America. But thanks, Dust. We will definitely have you back soon.
Bon appetit for the lunch.
Yes.
Bon appetit. So we'll be back on Friday. Episode 70 we'll have this coming Friday. Thank you very much, and we'll see you then.
All right. Bye.